Good evening to one and all. And here we are all together to see from Jainism individual and the communal level to remove the haterism among the people. So before starting, let me share
the PPT.
Yeah. Jai Jinendra. The word Jai Jinendra, it's a warm welcome to one and all. And here we say Jai to the Jinendras. Who are the Jinendras? Very beautifully said. We'll see to that in our upcoming PPTs. Relating it to the topic, the causes of culture of hate. Yes, in the current scenario, we can see, observe, and also experience how the people in and around have been created in the mind, in the heart of haterism against the other people, the other religion, and the little bit of humanity is also seeming to exist. So what are the causes for this? We'll see one by one. First is the dispute. When I say dispute, generally it arises out of arguments. When the thought of one person to other person, when they don't match to each other, when they don't correlate to each other, that leads to disputes. Quarrels, yes. If there is dissatisfaction in the view process, then comes the quarrels. Disagreement. Since being a human, we all have our own viewpoints, which goes from one part to the other part. And it's not necessary that everything should match. And there originates the disagreement. And as I said, the being of human, we all have our own viewpoints of different opinions. And this is what also leads to the culture of hatred. Because here, when we tend to talk about the culture, it is natural tendency to put in our viewpoints that my culture says so and so. This culture says so and so. So when these things keep on discussing and keeps on going out, that leads to the difference of opinion. Then inconsistent. When this happens, this inconsistency takes place in the process of following the rituals, the religious aspects, which leads to ethnicity. There it comes to consistent. Maybe some are very eligible to follow it till the end, but few, when they get bored, when they get boredom with all those things, they say, oh, these are bullshit. Let us not go with that. And there come the inconsistent in following things, and which also is a cause for the hatred. Conflict. Yes, of course. Because all these arguments, quarrels, disputes, everything at the end leads to conflict, which is a bigger hindrance. Now, how to overcome these things? So we'll see it one by one. Before coming to the solution, let us here clear a few concepts of Jain terminologies through which we are going to see the solutions. So the first word comes in here is Jina. This Jin is nothing but the root word of the word Jain. The Jin are the soul who have conquered oneself. Now here conquering doesn't mean achieving a great thing or conquering over the whole world or conquering on the other aspects. When I say Jina, it means conqueror of the self. This self is none but our own self. Because here it is said, the one who conquers oneself can conquer the whole world. And one who have conquered the whole world it means he has conquered the self. So when we say the self, it relates to the inner self. It is victory over the inner opponent. The opponent is not on the opposite side or the outer aspect of the self, is not a person, is not the situation. When we say here opponent, it completely relates to the inner enemies existing in the self. Now, who are they? Because when we say as a communal or individual level hateness, it generally or literally means the opposite people or the people in and around us. But here, when we talk about the Jina, they are the one who have first conquered their inner enemies. And what are they? First, it is the passions, the four passions: anger, deceit, conceit, and pride. These are the innermost enemies, which is the prime duty for each individual to overcome it. And that's what the Jinas, who are none but come out of a common human soul. They were the common human being by being in the process of self-realization and who have been in the process of meditation for years and years. In that meditation, they have completely conquered the self by overcoming these passions. And there are quasi passions which leads to these passions, like we have happiness, sorrow, grief, etc. and on. So these are the most important prime inner aspect to control oneself. Next, who are these jinas? As I said, they are the self-realized souls who have completely realized the infinite knowledge, the omniscience aspect. And with that omniscient knowledge, they have enlightened the whole world by showing the true pathway of liberation. These jinas are the liberated souls who are existing in the uppermost level of the universe, which is the place called moksha. So this is what about the jina, and that is what the word first I used at the beginning as Jai Jinendra. Jai here I means I bow with to these jinas who have enlightened themselves and also showing the true path to the other beings in the world. Now, the concept of Jain, since we are seeing from the Jainism perspective, so let us understand who are the Jains. Nothing but, as we discussed about the Jinas, so the follower of the Jinas are said to be the Jain. So the root word of Jain comes from the word Jin. And there, the religion of Jainism coming in. Set of principles which are preached by the Jainas. So the followers of that principles are said to be as Jain Dharam or Jin Dharam. They are none, and one who follows them, they all come under the category of Jains. Under this, we have the four main aspects as Shravak, Shravika, that is laymen and laywomen, and we have sadhus and sathvis, that is the monks, ascetics, and nuns. Next, moving on to the concept of worship. Because generally when we say cultural disputes or cultural hatredness, generally it starts with the process of the way how we consume or assume things. So by just discussing on the topic of worship, according to Jainism, here when we say worship, they believe completely in personality worship and not person worship. When I say personality worship, it literally means about the qualities of the pure soul. Because according to Jainism, each and every single soul have be with equal qualities. There's no difference between any single soul, and there's no person worship. So if you see in Jainism, there's no particular one God as to be the God of James. Yes, it's a small misunderstanding in our school days when it was taught us telling that Lord Mahavira is the God of Jainism. Since if you see the true aspect behind it, Lord Mahavira is the 24th Tirthankar, the fourth maker of the Jain perspectives. So he's the 24th preceptor. Starting with the first is the Lord Rishabhnath, the Adinath Bhagwan, who starts with the first fourth maker and ending with the 24th Lord Mahavira. Now, when I say personality worship, so what are the qualities which is being worshipped? So here comes the five auspicious or the supreme souls where all the Jains go down to those qualities, but not in the name. So the first comes is the Arihant. According to Jain aspect, there are 8 karmas, which are the biggest hindrance for the soul to enjoy its own qualities. These karmas are considered to be the burden on the soul for the transmigration of birth and death. So, the Arihant is not a name of a soul or a name of a person. So, Arihant is the state of the soul where the soul has shed down the 4 Gati karmas. When I say Gati, it means it is a real hindrance for the soul to attain the state of liberation. So when I say Arihant, it covers all the souls in the world who have shed down the 4 karmas. So by this we can say, when I say Arihant, it means I bow down to all the souls in the world who have shed down their 4 karmas. Next, Siddha. Siddhas are none but the Jinas, the liberated souls. They have the quality of shedding all the 8 karmas. Those supreme souls are completely free from karmas. They are very much liberated towards settling in the moksha. So I bow down to all the souls in the world who are free from all the 8 types of karmas. Next are the acharyas. So the acharyas are the supreme souls who are the head of their own groups and clans, where they take care of their disciples in their livelihood basis. It doesn't mean on the earning aspect, it means on the path of liberation. How to guide them, how to show them the right path. Since they themselves are in the path of liberation, they also guide others. And next comes the Upadhyayas. So the Upadhyayas are none but the knower of the scriptures, who has the knowledge of all the scriptures. When I say scriptures, it's again nothing but the word of Jinas. It's also called as Jinavani. So they are the Upadhyayas who guide others to walk in the right path. And last comes the Sadhu Sadhvis, the monks or the ascetics, and Sadhvis are said to be as nuns. So for them, it is the stepping stone towards the path of liberation in the process of purification or in the process of self-realization. Because all these are the status of the soul, but not any category. So I bow down to all these 5 supreme souls who are in the right way, in the right direction towards the right goal of aspects. And I bow down to all the single souls. So by this, Jainism proves that it is not a person worship, it's a personality worship. Now, why have chosen the topic of worship in this? Why have discussed it? Because generally whatever hatred or the discomfort comes in, it's all in the name of God. Oh, our God is supreme or your God is supreme. So such disputes, such arguments and such disagreements all leads to it. Where Jainism, at a very common and communal level, it clears out that there is no single person is superior. If considered to be superior, then it is based on the qualities. And moving on to the solutions. So the first solution which Jainism gives is the equanimity, the state of equanimity. This is a very beautiful aspect because it says that all single souls in the universe are equal. There is no difference from the soul aspect, because here when we say the soul, it are none but the jivas. The whole universe is consistent with jivas. Without jivas, we cannot imagine the universe itself. So the basic quality, though we see the difference in animal form, human form, celestial form, or the hell form, it is just the differences being made up by the karmas. But the internal aspect of the soul is common in all. The difference in perspective is through the eyes of karmas. Now, the second solution which Jainism gives, telling that all the beings have the rights to exist. There's no single being can be said it is being degraded or being looked down to not survive in this universe. Since all souls are equal, all souls have the right to exist. Now it depends who is in which form. As I said, being karma as the law of nature which works on each individual's on different aspects. Jainism promotes no caste system. You can never find this religion talking about the upper caste, lower caste, whatever. The only difference, as I said, is the karmas. The efforts. It talks about the self efforts, what an individual does towards the knowledge of the self. Because the quality of the soul, when we speak, it talks about the infinite knowledge and infinite vision. So that is the main motto and that is the main goal of every single soul to attain or to achieve, because that only leads to infinite bliss. Whatever happiness which we see in this universe, it's all temporary, maybe to the mundane existence or to the materialistic thing. So once this life is end, so all these happiness will come to an end. But what about the soul? The soul never ends with this life. The soul is an everlasting. That's why there is all souls considered to be as the supreme. The only thing, identification or the self-realization of the process may be in slow and for someone, and for some it is the quicker process. Next, as I said, the individual's self-effort is given more importance. And that effortness is measured in the previous PPT, which we saw as the Panch Parmeshtis, either in the monk ascetic aspect or from the Acharyas, Upadhyayas, Arihant, and Siddhas. So these are the major self-effort done by oneself in achieving the superiority of the Supreme Soul. Other than this, any effort is considered to be as the materialistic thing, because the one who concentrate on these inner self will automatically give away all kinds of disputes, arguments, disagreements towards the external world. Because since this inner aspect of pure soul is the supreme importance, they never bothered about the outside aspect as what's going on. And since they are all the renounced souls, so there's no chance of creating an hindrance towards other people, creating an hindrance towards the nature, or any disputes towards any arguments. The whole concentration is on the oneself. The second solution is the non-violence, ahimsa, which is the main motto of Jainism. Whenever we talk about ahimsa, the non-violence, generally we think about Mahatma Gandhi because it is said that he is the true follower of non-violence. But if you see from Jain perspective, this non-violence has to be viewed even at the deeper cause. First, knowing what is ahimsa, let us understand what is himsa, just opposite of non-violence, which means violence. Himsa means violence. Now, when we say violence, it generally reminds us about the external aspect, external circumstance, external situations, which makes us to understand in the reverse order. But according to Jainism, there are two types of violence. One is dravya himsa, which is the external violence, and the second is the internal violence, which is bhava himsa. Before committing any kinds of violence, any kind of violence it may be, it is said that first violence takes place is in the mind, the thought process of the self, because the end result of violence is always leads to anger, conflicts, disputes. But how does this begins? This begins in the thought process of the mind. So whenever there's violence taking place outside, the Jainism always says first violence is taking place on the self. How? By not being aware of the self, by not being in one's own nature, by not understanding the nature of reality. So we tend to fall under the prey of bhava hinsa, which is the internal hinsa. This internal hinsa, when it's keep on adding or promoting towards its thought, that thought is provoked towards the external violence. So first, the violence is on the self. When the jiva or the soul, once it gets aware about this, that awareness will help the soul or the jiva to remain calm, to remain in peace by considering the result of violence. And by this, the jiva may not move towards the external violence, which is dravya hinsa. So basically, when we say non-violence, it doesn't mean not harming or hurting others. That is the very external factor. But the beginning factor, which is the internal aspect, as bhava hinsa, plays a vital role in it. And that is the place where even the law, that is the nature of karma, when we say, that starts activating from the bhav aspect. And that's why the importance of bhava hinsa is considered more in the Jain perspective. Next, as I said, non-violence is the prime importance, and the motto goes ahimsa paramo dharma, which says ahimsa is the prime and the most important dharma, because There is no dharma existing on violence. When we say this Jain dharma or the Jin dharma, it's completely based on non-violence. And this can be reflected in the life of the ascetics, because the Jains ascetics or the monks, you can find them not using any kind of transport, no electricity, no, they walk barefooted, and they don't even consume food and water, which is with life. That's why we can find all the monks and the ascetics who follow non-violence completely in their life. Whereas regarding the laymen and the lay women, even they follow non-violence. But the difference is, since they have to survive in this universe, so the means is being considered as important. So for them, the violence on one sensed being alone is being permitted. But apart from that, from 2 cents to 6 cents, in any means, they cannot harm those sense beings. So by this, we can see at the minute level how Jain perspective towards violence, I mean non-violence. Because when there's no violence on just 2 sense beings, how can a person or a human think about the communal level or at the individual level? So that is how the compassion, the true daya, the true follow of the reflects here. So the lifestyle of the people itself reflects the true non-violence in their way of living. And even from the business aspect, if you see, there are secluded 15 forbidden traits for the laymen and women not to follow in their life, because they all come under the mass violence. This we can read it under the ethics, where it completely gives the guidance even for the laymen and women how to survive in the universe for their daily life. So this is at the very minute level, we can observe it. Next, moving on to the next solution, where Jainism talks about anekantvad, very beautiful perspective, multi-dimensional viewpoint. Yes, because reality is always is not one-sided. As the coin has two sides, same way to reach the reality, there are many facets. For this best example, we can see, observe or things like various aspects in our life. When we say anekantvad, it is, anek means many, vad is nothing but the dimensional, and viewpoints, it means to reach the reality, we should be a broad-minded and at the very many basic level. This is a very beautiful concept to reach towards the reality, because when we see the conflicts and whatever discomforts or the arguments, whichever comes in it, it's all because of not knowing the reality at every angle. We just catch one viewpoint and we tend to say that I have come to know so and so. I have seen this. So because of this, it leads to such things. Very beautifully, Jainism promotes about anekantva, multifaceted. And the next solution, moving on to parasparopagraho jivana. It is paras. Paras means one another, each other's. Upagraho, being and effort. It has been a blessed for us, because to survive in this universe, it is not only by oneself to be the enjoyer of all. If we are surviving, it means there are other beings who are literally giving their life for us. Now, who are they? They are the one sense beings, the plant bodied beings. Without food, can we survive? No, that's impossible. So, for our survivance, we are dependent on the plants. The same way, the plants are dependent on the water-bodied beings. The water-bodied beings are depending on some other. So, by this way, the cycle of life goes on. Each one is dependent on one another. Since we should not be the cause to create the hindrance for others. Yes, it is must for us to have food and we should, but again, have a limitation in that by not wasting food, by not misusing of the resources, by not considering things in excess. Desire less. The desireless life is the best life to survive in this universe for not creating an hindrance to others. So that is what the main logo of Jainism talks about. Parasparo pagraho jivana. Every jeev in the universe are dependent on one another. So never be proud of yourself or proud or try to be dominant on other beings. Since we are human, we are superior to all, but doesn't mean that we have the rights to dominate other beings. And as a human, it is our tendency, our nature to understand the other humans as a supreme soul and give the right importance to them. Leading to the next aspect, it's a beneficiary factor to one another. As I said, this paraspagraho is nothing but helping one another. Yes, by helping one another, every single soul in the universe is being delighted, is being happy to live, to survive, and they become or give a cause for others to survive. Dependency on one another. Yes, since I said you're dependent on the other beings, and is the same for the others. And this is what the cycle of life leads to. So never we assume that since we being human, we are with sixth sense and we have the ability to do anything in the world, we have the rights to destroy or to deploy the resources. And that's how Jainism promotes one at the very basic level. And at the individual level, it teaches every soul to give the importance of others. Now, we shall see how these aspects are helpful from the individual perspective. Since this is the main topic behind this meeting. So let us see it. Self. Yes, this Jainism promotes the self in a very challenging and at a broader aspect in knowing the self. Because, as I said, it talks about all souls are equal. Every individuals are equal in this universe. And everybody have the rights to live the way they are. So importance of self, because this is the self which will lead to supreme self. So the right understanding of the self, right knowledge of the self, and right conduct in the self, which is nothing but called as the Ratnatraya, the three jewels of Jainism, will lead to the true self at the individual level. And next is the behavior. Of course, when it talks about the self, it means it imbibe oneself to behave accordingly. Because Jainism never poses on others. It completely targets on the self, because if the self at the individual level can try to control his all kinds of passions, quasi passions and everything, as a result, this will lead a very good behavior. This will itself portrays his behavior in the society as a remembrance one. Positivity. Yes. Since Jainism never talks about the degradation aspect, Giving importance to all the other beings in the world itself proves that the positive thought which a jiva has on the other jivas. So there's no point of getting into conflicts, no point of getting into agreement, arguments, disagreements, and everything. Again, the philosophy of Anekantwad helps this positivity thought by not falling in the prey of conflicts. Faith. Yes, the true faith and the right faith, because whatever we have come across in Jainism or the words of Jinas is completely true. Why? Because these Jinas, as I have said, they have been shared the knowledge through the knowledge of omniscience, which is the true and the right knowledge. So there's no doubt in it. And that's why here comes the faith in it. And that right faith will lead to right knowledge and right content. So as a result, this process of self-realization becomes very easy. Emotions. Yes, it's very important to think of it. Carried away by those emotions. Emotionally, they talk so much. Emotionally, they feel so much. They get easily carried away by the situations. Again, Jainism, through the aspect of Syadvad and Anekantvad, helps to manage one's emotional level. That is what I said, the first point when we were seeing the control over the self, conqueror of the self. So it automatically helps the one to have the control over emotions through various means. And next is the development aspect. Since the basic ground of the jiva is being promoted to move towards the upliftment of the soul, and that will slowly help all the other jivas in the process of development of self-realization. Because ultimately the aim of the jiva is to attain the eternal bliss, not this temporary bliss in the temporary happiness in this mundane world, because all these will come to an end with our life. Because since there's life, it means there's a death. So in order to experience, the jiva is always in the development process while being in the process of self-realization. And last comes the independency. Yes, once the jiva has acquired the knowledge of the self, there it really exhibits that there's no doer, no creator, and no destroyer of the universe. All the souls are independent. Based on the self efforts, the jiva or the soul starts their way of living. That is how the independency flows in, by manifesting the omniscience knowledge. So at individual level, these are the aspects where we can work on it, and through the perspectives of Jain perspective, one can completely be in the state of peace and harmony. Because since it's related, completely concentrates on the self, never it can go in the prey of disputes, disagreement, arguments, and conflicts. Now, moving on towards the communal level. Since when we talk about the communal level, as individually, we are very much aware of what we are supposed to do, how we are supposed to do, and when. So that is why we can see that majorly all the Jains are still with their family, happy within their family basic aspect, because that is the first level where the child as a thing finds in and around as a people. So as a family, they try to understand each other, their weakness, that's the first harmony and the place of peace where the soul really understands the importance of it. Because when a soul cannot survive happily with his family, how can the jiva or the human can survive in the universe? Because being family, a very small nectar of place, which is most important to have that peace and harmony to begin with. And next comes the friends. Yes, since the present scenario is a situation where people are easily carried away by the thought of their friends. People are easily being provoked through the peer groups, through the friends, and they get moved away from the family, from the society, from the community. So it's all the peer pressure and the things. So again, at this aspect, Jainism is very much clear in understanding and making the common ideas to survive as what is right and what is wrong. Then, as the child or the thing grows, they meet or come out of the family and going towards the school, the college, the workplace, the professional level. So all these are the stages where the individual trying to mold himself in sustaining the principles. And who is with these principles will never fall into the prey of any kinds of disputes. And as a result, you can also find various fields, the Jain perspectives are existing at a very brighter way of living. And there comes in the society, community. This is a very broader aspect. Though we can see Jains population wise is very less, but their identity speaks there. And that is how it is being proved, because these Jain principles are not that easy. Yes, sir. Just 2 minutes more. And last, coming into the national level. As a Jain community, we all stand together. Now, main thing what I want to say here is there's nothing called person who is only born under Jain community is said to be a Jain. As I said, Jain is the personality worship. So any soul who is under this category is being respected, is being go down, and is being viewed with a greater aspect. And that is what whoever follows these principles, maybe intentionally or unintentionally, they all come under the category of Jains. And last is the universe, where it is the time for us to give back. And that is how the Jain perspectives believe in giving, but not only by receiving it. So I hope by this talk, I have touched all these points in relating it to individual level and communal level. And thank you so much for giving this opportunity.